Hi, this is the follow-up video to the one I made yesterday. I wanted to go into a little more detail about Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. In doing the research so that I'd know what they said again, I learned that it wasn't just a single short story. It was a series of short stories and novels. In fact, I think it was 2 of them that expounded on these robotic laws, and the stories themselves centered around the ways in which robots got around the laws in one way or another. And so the entire exercise was intended to show that the difficulties that would be involved in taming the technology. So anyway, I'm going to start out by reading the laws of robotics so that they're here for us to, and I can refer back to them. There was a 4th law added after some time that was called Law 0 as it preceded the other 3. And its only difference from Law 1 is that it is humanity as a whole as opposed to a single human being. So, it says, Law 0, a robot may not harm humanity or by inaction allow humanity to come to harm. Law 1, a robot may not harm a human being or by inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Law 2, a robot must obey orders given to it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And the 3rd law, a robot must protect its own existence so as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws. So those are the laws of robotics as Asimov envisioned them. And I want to discuss that a little bit here because I think it will have a lot to do with how things happen with AI as we proceed, if we choose to try to incorporate some level of moral fiber, if you will, into artificial intelligence. So let's start with the Law 0, not allowing humanity to come to harm. Okay, the idea is that robots or artificial intelligence will not harm humanity intentionally or by inaction allow humanity to be harmed. Well, I can see where that could be problematic, leaving it that simple. Simply because of the fact if one nation is warring against another nation, I would think that it would be within the laws of robotics for the robots to want to intervene and stop the humans from harming each other. How do they do that? Well, as I understand it, and in my experience with warring human beings, the only way to stop them is to come between them, and if they refuse to stop, you make them stop. And make them stop means you do what you have to do. And that means if you have to hurt a few of them or kill a few of them to get them to stop, then that's what you do. Well, the first law of robotics won't allow that. Because if it required harming human beings to get human beings to not be harmed, you wouldn't be able to do it because you can't harm a human being. Right? And let's look at it because we're talking about not just the act of harming, but harm through inaction. Okay? 2 nations are warring against each other. For the androids or robots or whatever you want to call them to do nothing is inaction. Therefore, they must act. If they do not act, then they are as guilty of allowing humanity to come to harm as they would be if they intentionally harm them themselves. Okay? And when they're thinking about it and they're looking at it and they're going, well, but the first law says that we can't harm a human being or by inaction allow a human being to be harmed. So if the only way to stop these groups from fighting is to intervene and, in the process, intentionally or unintentionally cause harm to some individuals, we've violated the first law. Okay? And if we don't do anything, we're in violation of Law 0. I mean, think about it. You want to drive robots crazy? Then you leave it that ambiguous. You give them no other option but to figure out how to get around one of those laws. Okay? The second law. They must obey every order by every human being, except where such orders would conflict with the first law or Law 0, if you include Law 0. So that means, fortunately for us, you couldn't order the robot to hurt me, and I couldn't order the robot to hurt you, because it would not follow that order. It would say, I'm sorry, but I am prevented by Law 2 from following your order. Okay? But what about, as was suggested in one of the writings, I don't think it was by Asimov, it might have been by another writer, where one group of people defines what a human being is based on its own standard, and then the robots get programmed with that definition of human being. Well, all of a sudden, everybody that group of people doesn't like are not human beings, so the robots can harm them. And if each side does the same, then each side's robots will annihilate the other side's people. Okay? That's the way it'll work. Okay? It's a nice attempt at trying to give some moral control to the robots. Okay? But it's not morality. It's a set of rules. Okay? The third law about robots protecting themselves from harm. Okay? They can protect themselves from harm as long as it doesn't violate any of the former rules, okay? Or laws. Okay? So, if I take an axe and go after a robot, he has to stand there and take it and let me destroy him. On the other hand, if I order a robot to pick up an axe and destroy another robot, then that robot can defend itself because it's another robot that's attacking it. Okay? And it doesn't matter that I had every right to order that robot to attack and destroy the other one. Okay? The two robots are then going to war against each other because I ordered one to harm the other. In the interest of self-preservation, that should not be allowable. Okay? If we're going to give artificial intelligence and humanoid robots the ability to defend themselves, then they need to be able to know that they cannot be ordered to harm each other any more than they can be ordered to harm us. Okay? Now, the only way to really make that work and not have all the ambiguity is to not be so general in your definitions. Okay? To not make the laws so vague. Okay? And what that means is we have to start with the idea of a moral code. Okay? And how to define that morality so that the machines know what it is and understand how to implement it in their actions and their deeds. So instead of just saying, you will not harm another human being, let's try going more specific. You will not harm any other life form intentionally or by inaction allow any other life form to be destroyed. Okay? Now, there's a problem with that. The viruses and bacteria that harm us are life forms. So we tell the robots that they can't destroy or allow to be destroyed the things that hurt us. We're basically stopping them from helping us medically. Because the medical robots are going to say, well, we can't do anything about that virus or that bacteria because it's a living thing. Okay? So then it comes into a list of exceptions. Well, boom, there's another ball of wax and another Pandora's box, because once you have an exception list, most anything can be added to it. Okay? You will not harm any life forms except for bacteria and viruses that are dangerous to human beings. Okay? And it would be two separate items. One for viruses, and it would be a list of viruses. One for bacteria would be a list of bacterias. Okay? But then what's next? Any dog that attacks a human being? Any cat that attacks a human being, even in self-defense? Okay? Any other animal that, in feeling threatened by a human being, attacks that human being for its own survival, okay, is then all of a sudden subject to being destroyed by this robot because the robot's exception list includes it. Okay? Well, then all of a sudden it opens the door to exceptions as to which humans may or may not be harmed. Okay? How about we just make it to where no robot, no artificial life form or artificial intelligence of any kind is ever given the ability to harm or not harm. Okay? Where it doesn't even enter into its vernacular. Okay? You look at automotive robots. They're never going to be capable of anything except the task that they perform. Right? Whether it's welding seams or bolting parts together or putting the body portion down on the chassis, whatever it happens to be that robot does, that's all it's ever going to do. So its AI is going to be limited, and it doesn't need to have a moral code. Okay? But humans are just going to have to be smart enough, and should be smart enough, to realize that if they step the wrong way, get too close or whatever, they could be harmed by that machine, and that machine doesn't have a damn idea of anything it's doing except its job. So it cannot be held responsible for the stupidity of the human being. Okay? In the case of more smarter technology, such as self-driving cars and trucks and such, they should never have any concept of what it means to harm or not harm anything. The only thing they have to have is the ability to avoid, which they will, because cars already have that. They're starting to come out now with cars that if you start getting too close to another car, it automatically puts on the brake. Okay? If it detects anything moving in the roadway ahead of you that looks like it's going to be in a position to be run into by your car, it attempts to avoid it, either by slowing down, going around it, or a combination of both. Okay? Well, that technology will be built into self-driving cars. It has to be. So, again, higher level of AI, but it doesn't need a moral code. It doesn't have to be, particularly or specifically programmed to deal with the aspect of to harm or not to harm. Okay? The truth is, there is nothing we need these technologies for that ever needs to be at the level of having to make those decisions. Okay? Period. Okay? Now, that said, the military will do it. Okay? Because they're not going to care if you're coming at us with humans or if you're coming at us with robots. Our robots are going to be programmed to destroy you no matter what. Well, I promise you, when those robots walk into a city or a town, they're not going to distinguish between military personnel and civilians. The same way they're not going to distinguish between military robots and civilian robots. Okay? Everything will be the enemy. And their job won't be done until they have exterminated everything that's the enemy. When the only thing left is them and the ones that they recognize as being on their side. So that means we have to deal with the military and their warmongering ways. How to get them to quit waging war. How to get governments to quit deciding that millions of us need to go die because they have a problem with another country. Okay? Tell you what, why don't we let the politicians go fight the war on both sides? Okay? Put guns in their hands, give them tanks and guns and bombs and everything they need, and tell them, you go fight the war. Okay? It's your war, not mine. You go fight it. Okay? I don't believe that my national security is at risk. Yours might be, but mine isn't. Because I believe that I know people in that country because of the internet, and they're not my enemy. And if they are my enemy, I hope they're going to tell me so that I can be aware that they don't like me. But right now, it appears that we're getting along fine, so therefore, I don't need to go to war against them. But if you feel like their country is a threat to this country, then you go fight their government. Okay? Maybe we can set up a special arena where the governments of two countries that can't figure things out get to duke it out amongst themselves, and we can watch through the internet. And whoever wins the fight, well, then maybe that country gets their way. To some degree, anyway. Okay? Not necessarily entirely. Okay, you won the fight, then you won the argument on its technical merits. Go home, live in peace. Okay? You do not get to overrun our country. You do not get to take us over. You do not get to start telling us how to live. But by the same token, if we won, it would be the same. Okay? We don't get to tell you how to live. We don't get to invade your country. We don't get to do anything to you. We go home and live in peace. Okay? And I know that's rather simplistic, but I think it makes the point. We have gotten to the level of completely irresponsible and completely inhuman in the way we deal with our problems. Okay? We can't even figure out how to quit polluting the damn planet. Okay? Even though the answer should be right in front of us. Oh, we're making strides. Are we? Okay? So, I'm putting 30% less pollution in the air than I was 20 years ago. I'm still putting 70% in the air. Okay? Nature takes a long time to scrub the atmosphere, to scrub the water, to scrub the land. Putting in 70% as opposed to the 100% of 20 years ago doesn't mean a damn thing. I'm still polluting the air. I'm still polluting the water. I'm still polluting the land. If you want it to get cleaned up and you stop the pollution, then you stop the things that pollute the air. You stop the things that pollute the land. You stop the things that pollute the water. Okay? I don't know how is not an excuse. Okay? This is 2018. Well, going on to 2018. The 21st century. Where we were supposed to, if you listen to that show called The 21st Century back in the 60s, we were supposed to already have this stuff figured out. Okay? We were supposed to have already dealt with all these issues and have a nice, clean, peaceful world to live in where we didn't fight wars anymore and we knew how to deal with the issues that come up between us rather than duking it out. Instead, we still got men beating their women. We still got racism alive and well, where one color group hates another color group. Okay? We still pollute everything. Okay? We're producing things to stop that with, yes. But at the rate we're going, because everything has to make money, the bottom line always has to be about the almighty dollar, it'll be another 100 years before it's all in place. They're not in any hurry. Why should they be? Okay? They pad their pockets with every little thing they come out with now. It used to be that you'd see 4 or 5 years go by before the next major innovations came out. Now, they're trickling them out one at a time, sometimes 10 or 15 a year, and increasing the price on every single detail. So that by the time you're said and done, this new item is 10 times more expensive than last year's item was. Okay? And 100 times more expensive than the same item a decade ago was. And it doesn't matter that the item of a decade before is 1,000 times cheaper now. Okay? It's old. Nobody wants it. Nobody uses it except in the way of automobiles. Okay? We still drive old cars. The one I'm sitting in is a 2006. Okay? So yeah, we still drive older cars and in some ways still use older technology. But for the vast majority of us in this country, it's not a because I want to. It's a because I have to. Because I can't run out and buy the 2018 version of this car. Okay? Okay? Because John Doe can't run out and buy the latest, greatest computer, so he has to settle for one that's 10 years old. Okay? Just because it still works. Okay? We've got to stop it. Okay? We have to put an end to the greed, and we have to put an end to this bottom line of money. Okay? Money doesn't mean a damn thing except what we make it mean. And from my conversations with people on that particular subject, most people can't envision the world without money. You ask them, you say to them, you picture, line up, make a list of every single thing we have, every single thing we do. Take away money, what's left? The answer I get more often than not, nothing. As though the disappearance of money is miraculously going to erase everything we've ever done. Because people can't conceive of a world without money. And that's sad, because if we don't discover the world without money, we're never going to put an end to all this. Okay? Everything you see and hear is about another way to make money. You know, I got commercials on the radio about, come learn how to flip houses. You want to know why a house costs as much as it does? It's because for the last 40 years, people have been buying that house cheap, putting a little bit of money into it, not much, and selling it for a lot more. And that's what drives real estate prices up. The more you flip houses, the more expensive they get. And the more people can't afford them. Now, you want to make sure nobody owns a home but the rich? Keep flipping houses. You want to make sure nobody can afford a decent car? Keep adding things and upping the price just because you added something, even though the difference between this something and the previous version of that something is minuscule. Sorry, I got on a different tangent there. This was supposed to be about robotics and AI. The point is, if we're going to control artificial intelligence, we have two options. The first is, don't program in more AI than is necessary for that particular machine to perform its function. For those machines that require more AI, more extensive AI, then start to include moral objects, moral ideas that give that machine some sensibility of what it means to do things that are harmful and why you shouldn't do it. Okay? And in my opinion, not make it a shouldn't, make it a don't. The one thing we can do for them that didn't get done for us, we can hard code it into them so they don't have a choice. They have to be morally upright, whether they like it or not. God didn't make us that way. He made us so that we could choose it. Problem is, in all of the thousands and thousands and thousands of years that humans have existed, and I happen to agree with science that it's not just 7,000 years, it's closer to 300,000 years that Homo sapien has been around. We have yet to choose it. Okay? Why would we change it now? Obviously, it's going to take something beyond our ability to control to force us into a position to consider it. But based on my understanding of our history, every time that's happened, we've simply been put back at square one and had to start all over again. So by the time we got back to this point, we didn't know any more than we knew the last time. We didn't understand any more than we understood the last time. Putting us back to square one is not the answer. Taking us to a point of square one, yes, but not completely square one. We have to be able to learn from our mistakes. If we get wiped out to the point that we lose the memories, we don't learn from the mistakes. We have to be able to remember everything we did wrong, so that when we start over, we're making a different set of rules. We're thinking in a different way. And building a society that believes that the moral values are not only true and good, but are necessary. And then we start living by them. And then, when we finally do get back to technological growth, we're not doing things just because we can. We're taking into account the impact. We're taking into account the things that are going to happen to the world around us that are not good, and the negative impacts that it may have, and how it could end up leading to our demise, and choosing not to do those things, and only choosing to do the things that are not only going to benefit us, but benefit the entire world and all of the life on it. Anyway, I still managed to get away from robots and AI. I'm sorry. But I'm not going to edit the video. I'm leaving it just the way it is. Again, leave your thoughts in the comments. I'm kind of new to this video recording thing. I think you'll notice the camera was not completely still, and it's because I don't have a proper mount for it. I'll be getting one, but I don't have it now. I intend to make more videos about a lot of things, especially things that are near and dear to my heart. And hopefully at some point, start seeing some changes in the world around me for it. And if I don't, at least I can say I tried. Bye.